Hello. 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 Om Stapakaya च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयोस्तुत्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूर्य सच्चित्सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामी तात्वामयानंद। Dear Swami Tattwamayanandaji and dear assembled devotees, it's a working day. Still so many of you have come. Actually we are fortunate because we have been having a series of Swamis visiting us from abroad, mostly from America. So one more in that line of distinguished Swamis visiting us. Swami Tattwamayanandaji, who is the head of our Northern California, the Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco. He is there now for 13 years. He is doing wonderful work. Maharaj Kavishishta is one of the outstanding Sanskrit scholars of the order. So, उन्होंने ठीक तरीके से जैसे परंपरा क्रमे जो संस्कृत शिक्षा प्राप्त करते हैं, so the way the traditionally Sanskrit is studied and learned. Many of us just started coming to the ashrama here and there with little bhashya, little something we have managed. But he has, even in his pre-monastic days, he has studied very thoroughly in a traditional way. That's why even now, when Swami from Trichure, they brought him all the way just to address one meeting. He was here about 1.5 months back in India, all the way from California to Trichure. He's a very senior Swami, belonged to some other order, but he said, no, you must come. So you have to come like that. So he gets invited to Sanskrit conferences in different parts of the world also. Apart from that, he is well versed in our literature and Vedanta, etc. His classes are very popular. And above all, he is a wonderful monk, a very nice person, very friendly, humble and unassuming. आज उन्होंने बहुत सुंदर एक टॉपिक चुना, Befriending the Mind, the योगा में, योगा के माध्यम में मन के साथ कैसे आप बंधुत्व कर सकते हैं, मन का कैसे, because you see, mind is the biggest problem. Because every now and then, youngsters, even elderly people come, Maharaj, कितना प्रयास कर रहा हूँ, जब भी बैठता हूँ मन इधर उधर चले जाता है. The moment we sit, the mind starts wandering. How to control the mind, how to study, how to concentrate, how to do japa, how to do meditation, everything is. And the problem in relationships, friendships, in family, between father and child, or mother and children, between husband and wife, or between in-laws and everywhere, it's all centered around this one entity called mind. That's why the famous saying, Maneva Manushyanam Karanam Bandha Moksha. Mind is the cause of bondage, mind is the cause of liberation. If you befriend your mind, you are liberated. Ultimately, everything is, it's the state of mind, You can say, I have 100 degrees, I have high temperature, I am sick. But you can say, just 100 degrees, nothing. So the whole thing is the way you look at it. It's all the attitude of the mind, ultimately. So, ultimately we have to go beyond the mind. That is the ultimate idea of sadhana, is how you can transcend the mind. But the best instrument which God or nature or Prakriti who has given us is this. We have nothing more powerful than that. So the whole secret of life, the success of life, lies in how we can handle our mind. How the mind can become a friend of us rather than foe. For most of us, mind is an enemy. Mind is creating all kinds of problems, putting us to tremendous difficulties. But if only you know how to handle the mind, how to control it, then you'll be in an extraordinary state of well-being. So that is why when Maharaj, I requested him to suggest a topic, he said, befriending the mind the yoga way. I thought it's a new center, Gurugram, devotees are coming. So in the beginning itself, let them know how to control the mind. So I have requested Maharaj, so he will now talk to you on befriending the mind the yoga way. Maharaj.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmassurupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Sruti smriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavad padam shankaram lokashankaram yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi Stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram Chamanitrayam Kartrasutrasya Bhashasya Kramadvivaranasya. I am very grateful to revered Swami Tattwamayanandaji for the very wonderful, generous introduction. And in fact, the reason why I chose this subject was it in a way attracted a large number of listeners, both from the United States and also from abroad, which I'll be giving these classes for the Stanford University's archival systems. So there is to be a global audience from different universities, even from, of course, different parts of India too. Now, coming straight to the subject, befriending the mind. The most wonderful asset that we can ever have in our life is a friendly mind. So what do you mean by a friendly mind? Give an example. Suppose you listen to a talk and you decide tomorrow onwards you would start meditation every day in the morning. You take a decision. Or maybe you take a decision to work harder for getting a high grade in the examination. You may decide to work better in your profession, chosen profession. But when you actually try to implement that decision, you somehow are not able to do that. There's a great conflict between what we want to do and what our mind permits us to do. If our mind is always willing to cooperate in doing what we want to do, there will be absolutely no problem in the world. You all want to do exercise in the morning. But when the time comes, sometimes body doesn't cooperate. Mind tries to find a wrong justification for not doing what you actually should do, what you actually want to do. So you can see a conflict between what we want to do and what our mind permits us to do. Now, such a mind is an unfriendly mind. In fact, one of the definitions of Charaka Samhita, interestingly, Charaka Samhita was enriched by an important commentary by Patanjali. I'm coming to that. It defines healthy mind, prasanna mendriya manaka sosthaha iti abhidhiyate. So what is a healthy mind? A mind which is always in a state of natural, spontaneous serenity, peace, harmony. And when the senses, mind and the soul are in perfect equilibrium, that mind is a friendly mind. You can check for yourself. When you want to do something in all sincerity, so you may have children who want to get higher grade in examinations, very sincere children, and you tell them to work harder. And when they try to do, well, tomorrow onwards I shall work hard, not today. Today I would like rather watch a TV. So I'll read a thriller, something like that. So sometimes our own mind doesn't allow us to do what we need to do for our own good. Such a mind is an unfriendly mind. So Charaka says, a friendly mind is a mind that smiles at you, that cooperates with you, that helps you to do what you need to do. Such a mind is a friendly mind. Now, coming back to the original invocation, maybe it may be an injustice on my part not to explain these two important verses which are frequently quoted at the beginning of any discourse on Yoga Sutras and also even yoga studios. But that is, Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Sarirasya Vaidagena Yopa Kurutam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjali Anatosmi. So, Patanjali was a great sage who wrote these Yoga Sutras. Altogether, 195 sutras divided into 4 chapters: Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, Vibhudipada, Kaivalyapada. And then this Patanjali not only wrote these Yoga Sutras, he also wrote a commentary on Charaka Samhita, which is an important book in Ayurvedic tradition. And also, he is the author of the most profound, the largest, and the most voluminous work on grammar. Not Sanskrit grammar alone, Patanjala Mahabhashyam. It is one, you have to spend your whole lifetime to study Patanjala Mahabhashyam. Not only many of us study only Navanika, which I explained introduction, with the commentaries. This is such a great man, Patanjali. And what he did, why did he write this? He wanted to cleanse your mind. He wanted to turn your mind into your best friend. For that he wrote Yoga Sutras. See, it's Yogena Chittasya Malena Vacham, Patanjali. So he wrote this Patanjali Mahabhashyam to purify your language, your pronunciation, the way you use language, words and sentences. And also he wrote this important work on Charaka Samhita in order to help you to clean your body. So for the health of the body, Yoga Sutras. For the health of the body, for the health of the mind, Yoga Sutras. For the health of the body, Ayurveda. And of course, for the health of language and speech, he wrote Patanjali Mahabhashyam. And the Munitrayam, the triple saints of yoga tradition is Patanjali, Sutragara, Vyasa, who wrote the commentary, that is Vyasa Bhashyam or the Patanjali Sutras, and Shankaracharya, who along with many other great works also wrote a work called Bhashya Vivarana, which means commentary on the commentary of Vyasa Bhashya. Now I mentioned Vyasa. If today we are discussing Yoga Sutras, is because of Vyasa. Vyasa wrote a commentary. And he analyzes our mind. He analyzes why our mind sometimes turns our worst enemy, as Tattwamayanandaji referred to. He analyzes the human mind by classifying our emotions and feelings and tendencies and impressions into 5 categories. It's called Kshiptam, Mudham, Vikshiptam, Ekagram, Niruddham. There are 5 states of human mind. If you can analyze yourself, sometimes you are Kshiptam and Mudham means you are either confused, restless, or you are dull. The morons, or maybe people suffering from, let's say, manic depressive psychosis, bipolar problems belonging to these 2 categories. Many of the abnormal problems belong to this category, Kshiptam and Mudham. Vikshiptam, that's a subject before us. Vikshiptam Manaha means mind which is like a pendulum that moves from one extreme to another extreme of a clock. The pendulum of a clock never remains steady. It moves in one direction, moves in another direction. You come to this temple, you pray, and you read some scriptures, good, and now you feel, okay, wonderful. I'm very happy. I attended prayer, I attended the lecture, I'm listening to bhajans, very happy. You go back to your home, you're unhappy. So the happy state of mind that you experience when you're in the prayer hall goes away, it disappears the moment you return home. So mind is moving from one end of the pendulum of the clock to the other end. Unsteady mind. Most of us belong to this category. Now, the reason why it's called Vikshiptam Manaha means a mind which is unsteady, which is actually wavering. The reason why it's called Vikshiptam is because it is unsteady, it is unfriendly. So what's the real reason for this unfriendly nature of the human mind? Meanwhile, if you want to get a picture of a man with steady mind, even the Bhagavad Gita used Sthidaprajna Lakshanani. in the Bhagavad Gita, from 15th verse to 72nd verse of the second chapter. 18 verses give list of the characteristics of a person with a healthy mind. Siddha prajnasa ka bhasha samadhistasya kesava. Arjuna asked this question. Dukkheshu anudiktamana sukheshu vigadaspraha vidaraga bhayakroda siddhihi munihi uchyate. Who is a siddhi? Means a person whose mind is friendly, is steady, in harmony and peace. A person who is not affected by, not impacted by either extreme pleasure or extreme pain. One who can look upon success and failure, profit and loss, good and bad, with the same equilibrium of the mind. Such a person is a healthy-minded person. Such a mind alone is healthy mind. You know what's the reason why for our mind becoming unfriendly? We always expect to enjoy and experience success and profit and joy all the time. It is impossible. No one can always expect a continuous succession of happiness. Life is like a coin with two sides. No coin can exist with only one side. A continuous succession of happy experiences is an impossibility. So the only way to avoid suffering from unhappiness is to stop looking for happiness all the time. It doesn't mean that you should not work for happiness. Do your best. We should work hard to get a promotion. There is nothing wrong, in fact, for working hard for money, wealth, happiness, status, and so on. But always remember, a continuous succession, an unbroken succession of happiness alone is an impossibility. In human history, in the history of human civilization, you cannot point out one great person, one human being who always succeeded. No, it's impossible. So the point is, in our life, we should develop a mind which is steady and strong by looking upon happiness and unhappiness with the same equanimity of mind. Please don't mistake me. It doesn't mean that you should not work for happiness. Everyone should work for happiness and success and profit and high paid job. That is absolutely necessary. Shankaracharya says in the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a bhashya, Kushalad na pramaditavyam. Among the instructions that a teacher gives to students who are leaving the Vedic hermitage before becoming married, before entering Grihasthasrama. One instruction is Madhudevo Bhava Pitudevo Bhava, etc. Then he says Kusalat na pramaditavyam. Atma samrakshanarthat karmanaha na pramaditavyam. It means a householder should never stop working for material prosperity, for money and wealth, through proper means, through dharmic means, for the welfare of the family, children, and so on. So, we should always be working hard for success, happiness. But always remember, happiness is only one side of the coin. There is another side to the coin, that is unhappiness. That may also we may have to encounter, and at some point of time, it means we should be able to lift our mind away from happiness-unhappiness equation. So, I mentioned this Vikshipta Manaka. When we read a good book, religious, spiritual book, we feel happy. When we listen to bhajan, prayer, we feel happy. But back home, when we return home, that happiness goes away. So there is an unsteadiness. But if we continue practicing spiritual disciplines, prayer, meditation, reading scriptures, holy books, etc., then slowly you find we'll be generating spiritual energy. Every good action, either a kind-hearted, compassionate action of charity, or any kind of spiritual discipline that we practice, sadhana we practice in our own individual spiritual life, All these can generate spiritual energy. When we generate more spiritual energy, what happens, the balance of our mind, rather the balance of the tendencies, impressions, samskaras and vasanas in our mind will alter for our own good. As we generate more spiritual assets in our mental system, our mind slowly becomes more and more friendly. So, the best way to turn an unfriendly mind into a friendly mind is constantly doing good things, mentally, physically, verbally. Speak good things, doing something good, meditation. If you cannot meditate, read some good books. If you cannot read a good book, go to some good place, a temple or any holy place, do some physical service activity. Even that can generate spiritual energy. As we increase the accumulated spiritual energy in our own mental system, slowly our mind turns more and more friendly. So when we try to meditate, mind doesn't create too many conflicts and problems. If the mind is not ready, if the mind is unfriendly, if you meditate, you feel like running away from meditation hall. We feel restless. Slowly, if we can lift our mind to a higher level by either reading, listening to bhajans, or doing some physical activity, a good physical activity can generate spiritual energy. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is one sutra in the Sadhana Pada. It's a definition of Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is defined by the commentators of Patanjali Yoga Sutras as good physical activities, karma yoga, detached activities. Even if you come every day to a holy place, do volunteering work for half an hour. Even if you do once in a month for half an hour, you will be putting money in the spiritual bank. And that will slowly turn our mind into our own best friend. Slowly the vikshipta manaha, this disturbed, unsteady mind becomes slowly steady. That state of mind is called ekagramana. So, kshiptam, mudam, vikshiptam, ekagram. Slowly, mind becomes more and more steady, stable, and becomes more and more friendly. Now, how do we detect? How do we recognize that our mind is slowly becoming friendly? It can be easily tested. Suppose you listen to a talk, or you read a book, or you just happen to get some good idea. Tomorrow onwards, for better health, you should do exercise every day. You should meditate maybe 10 minutes a day. Or maybe if you are a student in the university, you should be more steady in your studies, responsibilities as a student. Whatever may be your job or profession or your occasion in life, when you try to do something that you need to do, that you ought to do, that it's important for you to do, and if your mind is friendly and cooperating with you, that mind is a friend. Why does our mind turn unfriendly? You can think of a dog. If you give good food to the dog wags his tail, is friendly, is helpful. Suppose you throw stones, or you put, let's say, you make the dog eat some stones or thorns or weeds or something. Just one example, it bites you. If you feed your mind with dirty food, unhygienic food, bad food, toxic food, poisonous food, that mind falls sick. This is an important thing. Internet is a good example. One click on the internet, the computer, can take your mind into all kinds of unnecessary, poisonous, toxic material. So also books, magazines, many things. Especially the internet. Internet can be a wonderful blessing in our life. It can be toxic poison also. Because it can feed our mind with poison. And when you feed your mind with poison, that mind falls sick. It becomes unfriendly, like a dog tries to bite you. If you feed it with, let's say, a piece of stone or something, it gets angry. So mind becomes unfriendly because we try to we try to feed our mind with unhygienic food. And food for the mind, what's the food for the mind? Food for the mind is ideas, lectures, talks, some kind of association with concepts, and these are the things which can be called food for the mind. If we can give hygienic food, healthy food, nutritious food for our mind, mind becomes healthy, strong, and stable. If you give unhygienic food or poisonous food, it becomes sick and it dies. Now, in the Yoga Sutra, there are some very, very interesting sutras which I want to refer to. One important sutra is Maitri Karuna Mudida Ubekshanam Sukha Dukha Punya Apunya Vishayanam Bhavanataha Chitta Prasadanam. It's a very interesting. It actually helps us, it actually instructs us in our interaction with our people around. How do we react to people around us? Very often, our mind gets food not only from books, but also from interaction with people around. So 4 types of possible persons or personalities or connections are indicated here. People who are fellow spiritual seekers like ourselves. We should be friendly with them. Because if you associate yourself with spiritual seekers like yourself, your own spiritual tendencies will be strengthened, enriched. Maitri. Karuna means compassion. Suppose you meet people who are maybe spiritually not as advanced as yourself. You should not look down upon them. You should rather be compassionate, should be sympathetic towards them. Should not look down upon them. Because if we look down upon somebody, our own mind will accumulate the very problem that other person is facing. To give an example, suppose you make fun of a person who cannot speak properly. One day you'll find your own ability to speak will be reduced or lost. What we admire in others, that we catch, that we inherit. What we condemn in others, that unconsciously, that also we will inherit. So we should be sympathetic, understanding, and compassionate towards people who are not spiritually as advanced as ourselves. Maitri Mudida means you should be able to enjoy, you should be able to admire people who are even more advanced than yourself. You should not be jealous. We should not be envious. Rather, if we can be happy when another person, when we find somebody who is more advanced than ourselves, more successful than ourselves, then you find one day we also will become as successful as the other person. This can be physically verified. This modern science and technology may not agree with. But there are certain things in life which are scientifically can be scientifically experienced, can be more intensely felt and much more intensely experienced than the laws of electricity or physics or technology. The laws of life are unchangeable, they can be more intensely felt. So we should be able to admire and appreciate when we find people who are more advanced than ourselves. Upeksha, the 4th category. Who are they? There are certain people, and this is very important. One of the reasons why our own mind becomes our worst enemy is this. We sometimes enter into association with people who may be full of negative ideas. Suppose you come to Vedanta Society, Vedanta Society is US, here Ramakrishna Mission. You come to attend prayer and you meet somebody outside. Oh, it may kuch nahi hai. You may this nothing. It's all absolute rubbish. Don't go there. Your own faith, your own convictions can be shaken if you are not very careful. So, this is a very important thing. One of the most dangerous sources of unhygienic, poisonous, toxic food for the mind is wrong association. So, Patanjali says upeksha, keeping a long distance from people who are sources of negativity or negative ideas. So, In fact, if we can keep this in mind and write in a piece of paper, put in our pocket, there will be no problem in the world. When we find good people, be friendly. When we find people who are less fortunate than ourselves, be sympathetic. When you find people who are more advanced, be happy about their success. When we find people whose association may shake your own conviction. Suppose somebody tells your son or brother who is working hard for examination, that fellow says, don't worry about this examination, absolutely fake. You don't worry, don't neglect all your studies. It can be very dangerous. You need not fight with that person, because any kind of contact also can bring you into close, intimate relationship with that person. If you fight with them, that also is problematic. So keeping a long distance, Patanjali says, upeksha. The reason is, our mind functions at the level of what Patanjali calls kleshas, avidya, asmita, raga, desha, abhiniveshaha, kleshaha, Patanjali's own definition. Avidya and asmita, these are more philosophical, our ignorance of our own true nature and our wrong identity. But the problem is raga, dvesha, abhiniveshaha. Often our mind develops certain obsessive characteristics and a kind of irrational dislike for certain things called dvesha, and obsessive infatuation with certain other things, raga. In fact, very often you find ourselves in a predicament. We are extremely attached to certain things. We know it's not good for us. We know it's bringing bad results for us. We want to get out of that trap, but we cannot. It is called raga, obsessive infatuation or obsessive liking for certain things which you know not good for. It's not good for you. You want to get out of it, but there is an invisible link, invisible chain that bind you into that object of extreme raga or extreme obsessive attachment. Dvesha is opposite. We know very well that there is no need for us to hate a person, to hate certain things, but our mind develops a kind of obsessive hatred, negativity to certain things. We know logically it's not good for us. We want to get out of it, but we cannot. So Patanjali says, and abhinivesha, again irrational fear. Patanjali says, our mind functions at this level. Our actions will produce certain results. Two types of results come out of our actions. One result, very obvious and visible, tangible. The other result, it is not so visible. For example, you help a person with 100 rupees. He gets some assistance from you. That is visible. But there is another result. You feel, oh, I have helped a person. So this is an invisible experience, a vritti that is created in your own mind. So Patanjali says, good actions, good thoughts, good words, compassionate ideas, noble ideas, a higher ideal will always produce good vrittis in our mind. Vrittis create tendencies, vasanas, samskaras, and these samskaras will again lead us to identical activities, so that slowly our mind accumulates a lot of sattvic characteristics. As a result, our mind slowly begins to be more and more friendly with us. So the best way to turn our mind into a best friend is to keep doing good things. You may not be able to meditate because mind is not ready. When you go to a library, you want to read Bhagavad Gita, but instead you may feel like reading a thriller. So when it comes to intellectual activities, we cannot always exercise freedom, because mind doesn't allow you to meditate, mind doesn't allow you even to listen to a good bhajan. But suppose you go to a holy place, let's say you go to a temple, collect flowers, cleaning the place, that we can do physically. Patanjali says, physical activities will generate spiritual assets indirectly. Because if you go on doing good things, you can't help being good persons at the end. And slowly our mind begins to develop this ability to look at good and bad, success and failure with the same equanimity of mind. Again, it doesn't mean that we should become insensitive. Do our best. I can quote one sloka from the Gita to make this clear. In the Gita, Arjuna himself asking one question, Ata kena prayuktoyam papam charadi purushaha anichinnabi vashneya bala diva niyojitaha. Arjuna is putting one question to Krishna. See, anichinnabi vashneya bala diva. You see, what's the mysterious reason? Why is it that my mind goes towards wrong objects? It is directed towards wrong ideas. Though I want to do good things, but mind is not willing to do that. Anichannabi means I don't want to do anything that's bad, but still mind is going in that direction. So, in answer to this, Lord Krishna talks about all these subjects. Later, Patanjali put in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Now, one thing to be remembered is, that's very, very important. Patanjali gives a strong warning. In our thoughts, actions and feelings, we cannot watch every thought, every idea that comes to our mind. Impossible. You cannot be sure what idea is coming to your mind next moment. There is no freedom. But at the same time, we should always be vigilant. And the best way to keep our mind vigilant is to have a higher idea, higher noble goal to guide our life and activities. In Patanjali's system, there is one sutra, Parinama Tapa Samskara Dukkaihi Guna Visheshacha Dukkhameva Sarvam Vivekina. It's a famous sutra. It comes the 15th sutra of Sadhanapada. You can read it later. Parinama Tapa Samskara Dukkaihi Guna Visheshacha Dukkhameva Sarvam Vivekina. He says, if you are a highly evolved person, not spiritually necessarily, but if you are a well-educated person, a refined person, culturally and we'll say in terms of your activities, you are a very refined person, then you feel a kind of incompleteness, imperfection, even if you're the richest person in the world. Suppose you're the richest, most successful person in the world. Still, if you feel a kind of incompleteness, that shows your spiritual stature. Take the example of Buddha. Buddha was born the son of a king, a prince. And he lived without understanding, without experiencing any of the darker side of human life. He was brought up as a prince, and he was almost 28 years, and he's being taken around in a chariot in Lumbini, the city, the capital of the city, of the kingdom of where his father was the king, and he came to know some of the darker aspects of human existence. He saw the face of an old man, he saw the face of a sick man, and he saw a dead body being taken to cremation ground. So sickness, old age and death, the dark side of human existence. That made him think. Remember, Buddha was not going through any of these unpleasant experiences. Buddha was living happily in his palace. Very happy life. But Buddha suddenly understood there is something essentially lacking in human life. And this he realized when he saw the face of a saint. So he saw the face of a sick man, old man, and a dead body being taken to cremation ground. Death, old age, and sickness. And then he saw another face, a saint, whose face was all serene, all full of serenity, calmness, and spiritual glamour. And then he wanted to be like that. And he leaves his palace, he walks 1200 miles, he reached Bodhgaya, and he sat under the tree, Ihasane Sushudume Shariram Tugasti Mamsam Chivilayam Chiyatu Aprapasiddhim Bhuku Janmadurlabham Naivasanat Kayam Adaschalishida. You find Lilita Vistara, Buddha's life, you find all this interesting things. Buddha sat under the tree and he just took a resolve. He will not get up from that seat till he realizes the ultimate meaning of human existence. Now, what was that prompted Buddha to take this long journey, 1200 miles from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya? He did not have any problem, but he was worried about a universal problem of humanity, the problem of death, old age and sickness. He wanted to understand the meaning of this problem. So the fundamental incompleteness or imperfection of human existence at the empirical level, that is what actually bothered him. Now, if we can worry about something higher, that is one way of turning our mind into our best friend. It's an important thing. When we worry about some higher goal, we can worry without feeling wretched. Remember, Buddha, you can imagine Buddha walking all the way from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya. He was not crying and weeping, like a man who will cry and weep if he loses money. Rather, he was feeling miserable, but that misery had a higher meaning, higher dimension. He was looking for a higher meaning in life. Similarly, in our life, along with our professions, our job, our duties, our family responsibilities, along with that, if we can have some higher ideal in our life, it may be that you want to become a great novelist, artist, musician, painter, or maybe a philanthropist, anything, some higher ideal, if we can develop in our life, it's called parinami samskara, means a samskara, an understanding that is transformative. So it is called dukkhameva sarvam vivekena, Patanjali uses the word. Viveki, this kind of dukkha, this kind of worrying about a higher ideal, worrying about something noble, that comes only to people who are vivekinaha, means who have some degree of discerning wisdom. Like that, in our life, if we can develop some higher ideal in our life, along with our everyday duties and responsibilities and botherations, household duties, job, etc. Along with that, at least 10% of our time and energy we should leave aside for something higher. That's why it is said, if you work very hard for achieving some kind of worldly goal without some spiritual ideal, you are heading for disaster. There is a Sanskrit sloka which is not actually handed over from generation to generation from scholars. Ye puman adimedhavi chadurnam ekamasnude alpayu anapadyova daridra paditopiva. The meaning is this: if you spend all your time and energy, training and efficiency to acquire superlative perfection, the highest degree of success in music, in art, in literature, in anything, without some spiritual ideal, there is disaster waiting for you. You can imagine some of the greatest novelists, this man like Dostoevsky, you can imagine Tolstoy, Chekhov, or any of great artists, many musicians, they have superlative skills, but many of them become addicted to some minor problems or behavior problems. This happens unless they have some higher spiritual ideal to guide them. This is very important. You can see great artists, especially, please, I have nothing against movies, but many of the professionals in movie area, in film area, in cinema. Remember, I don't see those movies, never seen, but nothing against it, but this frequently happens. You know the reason? They have superlative skills, very high skills and perfection, the art, writing, music, but they push all the energy, all their skills in one direction. They are highly skilled, but they don't have a higher spiritual ideal to follow. So what happens is, there is some problem in the private life. Think of Surdas, Kabir Das, Tyagaraja, any of these great musicians who not only were great musicians and artists, but also had a strong spiritual ideal that followed them, that they followed, that they cherished their life. They reached the highest degree of perfection in their own chosen art of music, but also led perfect spiritual life. So it's very important. You may succeed to a very high level in business, industry, art, literature, music, but you should have some higher ideal to cherish, to guide us. Otherwise, there is a way, the higher you fly, lower you may fall with a thud. That's called Parinami Satya. That's why for every sensible, wise person, there should be a higher ideal to follow. Now, there is an interesting sutra in the Patanjali, the Kaivalya Pada, it comes. It says, Nimittam aprayojagam prakritinam varana bhedustu tata kshetriyavad. It's an interesting sutra. I should try to explain this. I have time? How much time? 10 minutes? Okay. So this sutra is very interesting. It tells you that your mind is naturally, spontaneously friendly with you. And unless you feed your mind with poisonous, unhygienic food, your mind will actually retain its purity and its serenity and its health. So an example is given with the help of an allegory in this particular sutra. Kshetrikavad means like a farmer. A farmer is trying to irrigate the field. Now, there is a river or there is a pond nearby. He has to cut a canal with the river. Let's say half a mile, he has to cut a canal. So what he does is, he is only removing the soil from the particular area of the soil. Then the result is, you get a canal and the water flows from the river to the field. So what he did not do anything. He only removed the soil. Like that, all that we need to do is to remove the obstacles that stands in the way of the manifestation of our own mental purity, the true nature of the mind. Another example is given in many of the commentaries. Suppose you had a granite block and you are a sculptor, and suppose you are asked to make a statue of Buddha, and you have in front of you a huge granite block. So when you chisel out a large portion of the granite block by working hard for maybe months, the result is a statue of the Buddha emerges out of the granite block. So what you did, you chiseled out all the unnecessary parts of the granite. Just like you removed all the soil that stood in the way of connecting the river, the field. Like that, in our own life, if we can connect our mind to a higher ideal, what happens is our mind gets perennial waters. If our mind remains a tiny stream, it gets water only during rainy season. Suppose our mind is connected to, let's say, a pond or river which is full of pure water, then our mind is full of perennial waters throughout the year. Like that, if we can connect our mind to some higher ideal, what happens is our mind gets the perennial waters of spiritual energy. So that's the importance of some higher ideal to follow. And I can quote in this context one interesting verse from Shankaracharya's Viveka Chudamani. It's a kind of warning for all of us. The sloka is this: Lakshachudam chedyadi chittameshat behirmukham sannibade tadastadaha pramadada prachuda keligantukaha sopana panktu padito yatha tatha. What it means is, suppose you are standing on the top of a staircase and by mistake, of course, you are holding a rubber ball in your hands. By mistake, the rubber ball happens to fall on the top layer of the staircase. It won't stop there. It will slowly come down till it reaches the floor of the staircase. Like that, if you are not very careful about feeding our mind with only good food, we are not very careful about avoiding any toxic poison entering our mind, especially in this age of internet and YouTube, where you can sit in your own little room and your mind can be linked to the most poisonous, toxic food, so that your mind will fall sick and die and disappear, degenerate. Many of the problems of bipolar, or maybe especially in modern psychology, psychiatry, is called triple delusions. So delusions of grandeur, delusions of persecution, delusions of reference. These related to schizophrenic problems. Many of these problems, some kind of phobias, depressions, that frequently many of the young generation suffer from. Worrying without any reason, any cause. The most serious problem we are facing. In America and European countries, very common. Youngsters, they have money, they have job, they are successful, still they are worried about something, they don't know what they are really worried about. This is a more serious problem. Suppose you have no job and you worried about your joblessness, the problem is simple, the solution is simple, you get a job, the problem solved. Suppose you have no money, you work hard, you make money, problem solved. But suppose you have a good job, wonderful cars, family, everything, still worried, what will you do? That's why the problems of mind cannot be solved at the mental level. The problems of mind can be solved only at the spiritual level. So mind should be somehow linked to the spiritual ideal. That's one important thing to remember. The psychological problems, psychiatric problems, have no permanent solution at psychiatric level, which every psychiatrist will privately admit. Every medication in psychiatry, except some minor problem, every medication is an attempt to postpone the problem. They will return with greater intensity. Like that, if we can in our life somehow link our mind to some higher ideal, something that takes us away from the empirical, physical, to the higher spiritual level, that is the surest guarantee to keep our mind steady and strong. Remember this, there is no permanent solution for psychological problems at psychological level. The problems of the mind can be solved only at spiritual level, at a higher level. And the best way to practice spirituality is not just starting pranayama. This is a problem in Western countries, They start doing pranayama. I have myself encountered maybe at least some 50, 60 cases, very serious cases during the last 10 years in the Silicon Valley, including many Indians. People work hard for 16 hours, sometimes even 15 hours in their homes, and then in the evening, at night, they meditate, they do pranayama, and they get into all kinds of problems. They suffer from the problems of delusions, Suddenly they feel the kundalini is rising, all sort of things. That's why Patanjali gives a strong warning. You should never take up any higher spiritual disciplines without going through the essential fundamental steps of yamas and niyamas. Ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, sauja, santosha, tapas, swadhyaya, isa pranidhana. The commentators like Vajaspati, Vijnana Bhikshu and others, and Shankaracharya, he wrote in his Vivarana, which follows the footline, the footsteps of Vyasa Bhashya. He says, if a person practices pranayama and pratyahara and dharana, the first step in meditation actually, if a person does that without being established in some of the fundamental yamas, what happens is he's heading for trouble. To give an example, Suppose you are not fully established in ahimsa and you practice pranayama and pratyahara, there is every chance that you may become very violent. Because himsa, that natural tendency can intensify. A person who is not well established, aparigraha and asteya, if he practices higher disciplines, he may become a very greedy person. So what I mean is, I don't want to extend this discussion further. What it means is, Patanjali places in front of us a very wonderful, simple method of turning a hostile mind into a friendly mind. That is, doing good things. Do something good. So again, I repeat, we may not be able to do things at the intellectual level. But mind may not permit you to read a good book. Mind may not permit you to start meditation because mind is not ready. Mind should be slowly lifted to a higher level before we actually try to meditate. You cannot start a car, from 0 to 100 kilometers. It doesn't happen in split second. It takes a few seconds at least. Like that, mind should be slowly elevated to a higher level before we actually start practicing dharana, dhyana, and other higher disciplines. Therefore, the first thing to do is to do something good, Kriya Yoga. The first sutra of sadhana was the Kriya Yoga. Something good, at least at physical level. Slowly, if we go on doing something good at the physical level, slowly our mind also accumulates spiritual energy. The good physical actions will produce spiritual energy. And that will enrich the mind, that will refine the mind, that will sublimate the mind, and that mind will one day become our best friend. So, some kind of Kriya Yoga, physical activity, Karma Yoga, what we call Yajna Vaisheshtatamam Karma. Any noble activity is called Yajna in the Katyayana Sutra Vyakya. So, if we can do that, it's like entering a moving train. Once you enter a moving train, you are sure to reach the destination. Maybe not today, maybe after some time. So, I want to conclude right now. I want to conclude. The point is, Maharaj, do you have any questions they want to ask? 5 minutes? Yes? Not necessarily. So, the best thing that we can do is to keep our mind fixed on some higher good activities, at the same time to have a higher ideal to guide our life, our thoughts, words and activities. Thank you. Namaskar.
Om Itagne Daika Shakti Ramakrishna Sitahiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Sharadam Pranamabhyam. It's a wonderful topic expounded so beautifully by Maharaj. अभी भी इसकी चर्चा बहुत ही हो सकता है. No, that was already 8 o'clock and some people some understand. So I thought it's better some other time. So what you have heard, supposing we can assimilate and try to put it in practice in a small way, probably slowly when Maharaj comes back again, then we can ask him what is the next step, Maharaj. We have done this far. Please tell us next where we go. Huh? So let us go with that wonderful feeling today, how an unfriendly mind can become very friendly. But Maharaj put it, basically the mind is very friendly. We only have introduced some unfriendly elements so that the mind is becoming hostile. Now we have to only remove the obstacles and not do anything. Then the mind would once again become free and friendly, and the perennial river of spirituality will start flowing into our hearts. So we are deeply beholden to Maharaj. One small announcement: on the 30th, in the Ramanami, it's a holiday, we have a puja and homa etc. in the morning. Most of your Vice President Maharaj Gautamanji will come. He will offer arghya etc. at the temple. Around 10:30, 10:45 we can all offer pranams to Maharaj, and then Maharaj will leave for Delhi Center. Thank you.